Hello everyone and welcome to Biohackers Lab. I'm your host Gary Kerwin, and on today's episode I have Siim Land. Siim is an author, content creator, holistic health practitioner, and high performance coach. He has a degree in anthropology, but his passion is biohacking and self-improvement. He shares his thoughts and tips on how to achieve what he likes to call body-mind empowerment through his podcast and popular YouTube channel. Siim, thanks so much for coming on for an episode for today.
Yeah, thanks for inviting me, and I'm excited to talk about some cool topics.
Oh, for sure. I mean, with my introduction there, I mentioned how you're into mind-body empowerment. So the topics that you can talk about are very vast, from nutrition, physiology, mindsets, motivation, so many things. But the focus that I'm going to be talking about and I want to explore with you today is the ketogenic diet and fasting, which I know you produce a lot of content around. So my first question for you then is, why do you think the ketogenic diet is ideal or maybe the best way for self-improvement?
Well, I would say that it's not necessarily always the best thing for all situations, so to say. Although the keto diet, in my opinion, can be useful, let's say for losing body fat as well as improving cognitive performance, it may not be always ideal, and it may not work for some people either, whether that be because of some genetic predispositions, some medical conditions, or even certain metabolic requirements. I wouldn't put like a high level athlete on a keto diet just because they do need to take into other they need like some other fuel sources as well, like more glucose and glycogen. But in my own personal experience, the reason why I'm doing like a keto diet is because of the stable energy levels and more mental clarity that I experience during the day. So whenever I am in deeper ketosis, then my cognition is definitely sharper, and I will always have more focus, and that's going to in turn help me to produce more creative work and everything else that I do as well, like produce the podcast, create YouTube videos, write several books, and keep myself kind of free from the dependency of food, so to say. Like keto and becoming more fat adapted helps you to not be so dependent of constant feeding and not having to suffer from these ups and downs of blood sugar rushes, and you kind of teach your body to run on your own body fat for fuel, which in turn can help you to become more self-actualized. That's the way I look at it, so to say. Keto helps me to overcome this the necessity for eating all the time and that's going to help me to do other stuff that improve my life much further.
Mm-hmm. And I mean, I think that's what a lot of people would like, is not to be dictated by their food, to get hangry. Life is always just when's my next meal? What do I eat? I need energy levels.
Yeah, because it's so crazy to think that people think that skipping breakfast or skipping an entire day of eating is something dangerous, or that's something deviant. That's actually the norm under which humans evolved under. So to say, people didn't have like 3 squares of meals a day, and they occasionally, very 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 frequently, they would go through days and days without eating all the time. So it's actually the norm to be fat adapted, and the norm to be intermittently fasting all the time.
Because that actually ties into the second question I wanted to ask you, was breaking up the keto and the fasting, was why do you think fasting is so beneficial for self-improvement? And I think you've sort of alluded to that there's a historical relevancy that humans are meant to go through fasted states.
Yeah, it is like fasted physiology also has many other benefits. Like it's going to reduce inflammation, lower blood sugar, lowers insulin, and everything else. A lot of the other benefits help to not only burn more fat but also have like longevity boosting benefits and general health benefits. So I would say that fasting, the pure fact that fasting makes you healthier will help you to not improve your physical performance but also your mental performance, and potentially help you to live longer as well, or at least increase the health span, so to say, the amount of youthful years so to say.
And so I'm going to get back into fasting a little bit more now, but when it comes to the ketogenic way of eating, there's so many different ways of doing that way. Do you have a particular preference, or that you've had to experiment with different ways? Do you have any thoughts that if we looked at a situation of just someone who wants to stay healthy through their years into their old age and has a sharp mind, strong enough body, do you think there's a certain way of doing keto that's the best way?
I think like there isn't like a necessary the best way for keto, and the perfect way of eating a keto diet would change between people, and depending on their body composition, depending on their metabolic conditions and medical conditions and such. But in general, I myself have been trying out different types of keto. In addition to like the standard keto diet, I've been doing like cyclical keto diets and targeted keto diets, as well as like some sort of modified keto diets where the protein intake will be slightly higher and the fat is reduced just to promote more muscle growth and promote better body composition. Because the standard keto diet with the epileptic macronutrient ratios, where the carbs are very low and protein is also very minimized, those kinds of diets, they may not be ideal for most people just because they decrease protein intake, and most people will actually benefit from slightly modifying their keto macros by lowering their fat a little bit and increasing their protein just to compensate for some of the deficiencies.
hmm So I love that. It's always the N equals one. Everyone's different, depends on your situation, your physiology, your metabolic history.
Yeah.
And there's lots of ways to get around this. So there's no one right way. And then when it comes to fasting, what are your views there? Because there's lots of different ways to fast. What would be your beginner's fast, or the way that you would introduce someone to fasting?
Yeah. Well, it is true. Like let's say, like physiologically, it could be possible for everyone to fast, and there wouldn't be no negative side effects. So to say, if you were to put into the wild, then the only way for you to survive is to simply start fasting, and you would adapt quite fast to that. But in like the most of the kind of you know things that inhibit the person to get used to the fasting have to do with like the psychological habits and their daily routines that simply enforce certain ways of eating, and they don't necessarily crave the food. Tend to crave more towards like the routines and eating foods at a particular time of the day. So I would, maybe for someone who is interested in trying to start fasting, then I would simply advise them to try to skip a certain meal during the day, whether that be in the morning or in the evening, like having like an earlier dinner or like a late brunch type of breakfast. That would be simply a good place to start, and to then kind of gradually increase the time they spend in a fasted state and postpone their meals in some way, and time restrict it so that they would get used to more of like a running on their own body fat, and to not necessarily be so dependent of these different types of meal timings.
So it sounds like that's the beginner's way, is just that time restricted feeding, that you have a smaller
Yeah,
eating window in a day before you get into these long day fasts or multiple day fasts.
yeah, yeah, for sure. Like it's not going to be. First of all, it's simply going to be like so much more difficult for someone to jump right into a 5 day fast if they haven't done anything like that. So yeah, usually I would suggest starting to experiment with the daily time restricted feeding, whether that be like the 16 hours of fasting and 8 hours of eating, and then gradually moving on into more confined eating windows, like the warrior diet or one meal a day, where you eat your food maybe only within like 2 to 4 hours or something like that. And then after that, you may like start experimenting with like 48-hour fasts, 3 day fasts, 5 day fasts. But those extended fasts, they are like that sustainable. You can't do them all the time, and they do hit like a point of diminishing returns after a while. So still the daily time restricted feeding is still going to be like the biggest bang for a buck, so to say. You're going to gain most of the results, and they're more sustainable.
And that's, I guess, when looking at something that's sustainable and longevity, that the time restricted feeding you can do if you're in your 20s or if you're in your 80s, and that's like the baseline. And then every now and then it sounds like you're going to tap into the multi-day fast if needed.
Yeah, like I myself try to aim for these longer fasts, maybe once a quarter every year, so to say. So in total, I may have like three about 3 to 4 of these 3 to 5 day fasts every year, and I do them not only that I need to, but I do them just to kind of put my body into this deeper state of autophagy, namely, and to really kind of give my body a short break from all the food that I eat, and then to reset the system. And there is a lot of longevity boosting benefits for that. So the reason I do it maybe once a quarter is that, if you do it too often, if you fast too long all the time, then you may be simply predisposing yourself to some like a muscle loss and some other ailments, so to say. So fasting all the time isn't not going to be optimal, so to say. That's why you want to balance it out with proper refeeding and proper, getting enough nutrients from the food that you do eat.
Mm-hmm. And before we get into the how-to do multi-day fast, I'd like to just find out, with the time-restricted feeding window, do you have a preference that people should eat more breakfast and lunch and skip dinner, or eat in the middle of the day, or eat a lunch and a dinner? I'd be interested to find out if you feel there's a better window to eat in.
Well, yeah, like a lot of other researchers, like Siim Land, he has done like this research on time restricted feeding, and he has found that it's most optimal to kind of postpone the breakfast to at least a few hours, and then consume the most of your food within an 8 hour time window, and maybe have like an earlier dinner to not go to bed, full with a full stomach, so to say. I would suggest that it is a good idea to maybe at least stop the eating window about 2 hours or 2 to 4 hours before going to bed. That would be like the optimal time window, and that's going to help you to sleep better, and that's going to prevent any of the other side effects of going to bed with a full stomach. But in the morning, I would say it is still a good idea to postpone the breakfast at least a few hours in the morning, because let's say if you've been sleeping all night, then you are already in this very mild fasted state. You've been fasting for about 8 hours, and if you immediately start eating in the morning, then you're going to have like a shorter fasting window, versus if you were to postpone your breakfast at least until the noon, then you're going to prolong all the benefits that you will get from the fasted state. And you don't necessarily, usually people don't really feel that hungry in the morning either, and they much rather skip breakfast than skip dinner, so to say. And the for dinner, it's always easier to always stick to the other social aspects of eating as well, like having family dinners or going out to some sort of a dinner party, whatever it is. So I would say that skipping breakfast is always a better solution rather than skipping dinner for most people. And I myself find it more sustainable as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I do hear it from a lot of people from time to time saying, "Yeah, I'm just not hungry first thing in the morning, and I have to wait till later in the day." So I think there's a lot of people who prefer that too.
Yeah, it's like when you wake up in the morning, then you will also have like higher levels of cortisol, which will help you to, like, a lot of people think that cortisol is bad. Well, of course, like chronically elevated cortisol is bad, but in the morning, that cortisol helps you to wake up, and that cortisol will also help you to mobilize a lot of your body fat stores and to break down glycogen from the previous day. And it will always kind of set the right fat burning state for the rest of the day, so to say. You get into deeper ketosis, and you stimulate the other fat burning metabolic pathways. So if you were to be eating immediately after waking up, then you're simply blocking that, so to say. You're stopping that from happening to a certain extent, and you're gonna miss out on all like the potential benefits. So it's simply like a wiser idea to like postpone when it's like the easiest place where you can push off the first meal, and you're going to extend the fasting window.
And a common question that probably crops up at this stage is, well, if I'm going to skip the food, can I still have a tea or a coffee in the morning, or does that break the fast?
I think it's perfectly fine, so to say. Like the amount of calories in coffee or tea is like so minute, just like 2 calories per cup or something like that, and it's not going to interfere with the processes of ketosis or the processes of autophagy. Coffee and tea can actually stimulate autophagy to a certain extent, and they do like stimulate some like liver processes and digestive processes, which will kind of mimic some digestion. But in my opinion, it's not like a big deal. It's not going to matter in the long term. You're still going to gain like the most of the benefits of the fast. which are related to like the autophagy as well as the ketosis.
And with bringing in the ketogenic diet, a lot of people would have a very fatty coffee maybe in the morning there. Would an exceptionally fatty coffee, like 2 or 3 cups of a butter coffee or very heavy cream coffee, does that break a fast?
Well, the rationale is that because it's like pure fat, then it's not going to raise insulin, and therefore it's going to keep you in a fasted state. Although it will probably keep you in ketosis, I would say that it's still going to inhibit some of the autophagic processes, because autophagy is more regulated by nutrient signaling, and that nutrient signaling can happen from like all the nutrients and all the macronutrients like insulin, glucose, amino acids, protein, and fatty acids as well. Fatty acids can still send the body the signal that there's nutrients around. So you may be still getting like the fat burning benefits and the ketogenic benefits, but you probably will miss out on some of the autophagy related benefits, which itself is like fine. If your goal isn't to necessarily stimulate autophagy at that day, then it's not going to matter, so to say. You're not going to like you're not going to gain a huge autophagy boost as well if you're fasting only for like 16 hours. So if the coffee is helping you to fast for longer, then I would say it's going to be worth it. And if it's going to help you to like maintain a caloric deficit, then it can be also very useful. But at the same time, it has to be kind of go back to the person of what their goal is with the fast and what are they hoping to get out of it, and how many calories do they end up consuming at the end of the day.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I'm asking you all these questions, Sim, because you're the first person I've got to explore fasting. So excuse me if I go into a couple of the details there. Talking about autophagy, then, so just a normal 16-8 sort of eating window cycle. Do you not get the benefits, or do you get some autophagy benefits, or do you have to go into multi-day fast to truly get autophagy benefits?
Yeah, it has to depend upon like what's the overall metabolic status of the person, so to say. If let's say autophagy is mostly regulated by nutrients, certain nutrients such as amino acids and glucose are the main ones that regulate autophagy. So as soon as your body becomes deprived of those things, then autophagy will kind of like start increasing in a dose specific manner. It's not like an on and off switch. And let's say if you're a healthy person, if you're not consuming excess amounts of carbohydrates, if you don't have excess inflammation, and you're not like consuming excessive amounts of protein either, then your body will go into this depleted state faster, so to say. It doesn't have like a bigger buffer zone to burn through. If your glycogen stores are all full, then it's going to simply take a longer time for you to experience these benefits. And let's say if you can also, on a keto diet, let's say on a low carb keto diet, then you can expect to gain some autophagic benefits already within the 16-hour mark, or like fasting for maybe like 20 hours, then you will already be in somewhat deep autophagy, just because you don't have like excess glycogen and you don't have that many amino acids floating around the system.
Mm. And, I'm sure a question crops up in some people's mind at this stage going, okay, so we're saying there's all these benefits with autophagy. Is there any way that I can test that I'm actually doing this autophagy thing, or that it's having an effect on my body? Would you say there is any way that someone could test it?
Well, currently we don't have like any way of measuring autophagy in humans. All the tests and all the studies are done in other species like mice and fruit flies and such, and they measure the amount of autophagic flux, or the amount of autophagy related genes floating around around the organism. But I would say that although you can't measure it directly, you can still predict it. So to say that you can make some presumptions based upon the research that we currently have, such as if you know that lower glycogen and lower amino acids promote autophagy, then and you know that fasting depletes them, then you can already predict that, okay, you know around the 24-hour mark I will be in quite deep autophagy already. But there are some things that may give you some direct feedback that potentially can hint towards whether or not you are in this autophagic state, and you can measure it with your insulin to glucagon ratio. If your glucagon tends to be higher than your insulin, then you're more glucagon promotes the breakdown of glycogen, and glucagon promotes ketogenesis as well. So glucagon will also promote all the catabolic processes in the body, and autophagy itself is a catabolic process that breaks down old cells. So if your insulin is high, then those things will be negated. And in the other example of glucagon being higher, then you can predict that there's more autophagy and more ketogenesis. You can't. I don't know. Like, I'm not sure if you could potentially measure insulin or glucagon at home, but you can measure them at your doctor. But what you can measure at your home would be like the glucose ketone index as well. If your glucose is lower and your ketones are higher, and you're already fasting, then you can make some guesstimates of whether or not you are in this autophagic state.
Mm-hmm.
But it's not like direct, and it's definitely not perfect. We will definitely want to have like something that is going to give you like direct feedback of autophagy, but at the moment we don't have anything that is feasible in humans.
Mm-hmm. And for anyone, I don't think we define the word autophagy. For some listeners that might not know, but it's just like cleaning up dead or bad cells or old cells in the body. It's like it's spring cleaning the body in a way in multiple places.
It literally translates into like self-eating and eating of self, and your healthy cells kind of start to remove all the weaker and the dysfunctional components of the cells and convert them back into energy.
Mm-hmm. And this all ties into your mind-body empowerment, because this gives you ability to get the best out of your body, the best out of your mind.
Yeah, in a sense that autophagy is really critical factors for longevity, and it helps to remove dysfunctional mitochondria that cause inflammation. And one of the reasons why people tend to age or they die in the first place is because of mitochondria becoming weaker and mitochondria losing their function. So autophagy keeps the mitochondria youthful and prevents them from becoming dysfunctional. And also, like for cognitive performance, autophagy is also quite important for clearing out the beta amyloid plaques that happens in Alzheimer's. So it can prevent like cognitive decline and other sort of issues. So in some other species, for instance, in mice, autophagy is also like directly linked to the increased lifespan from caloric restriction. If the mice are blocked from autophagy, like they're genetically modified, then they're not going to live longer, even when they're put under huge caloric restriction. Versus the other mice that do have autophagy activated, those mice will still live longer. So autophagy is still like a really important part of the longevity benefits that you get from caloric restriction.
Mm-hmm. And I want to get into now multi-day fast, because I think I have seen somewhere that you share a nice recipe, like a how-to step to get started into a 3-day fast. Could you maybe just share some of your thoughts then? If someone's now ready, they've done the time restricted feeding, they feel comfortable, it's like they've broken that routine and that mindset that they're dictated by food, and they're like, well, Siim said, yeah, I should try this 3-day fast, this quarter, just to see what it's like. What would be your tips for someone who's trying to do a 3-day fast for the first time? How do they start it? Or should it be a 3-day fast or a 1-day fast?
Well, I would say that if the person hasn't tried like a 24-hour fast or like eating once a day only, then they should try that first, just to know like how does it feel to go like for a longer period of time without food, which in reality like isn't that like a long time really. But yeah, I would say that like a real fast would be like a 3-day fast or a 2-day fast. Like a person can't start with like a 48-hour fast before they try a 3-day fast, because usually the most difficult part of any kind of longer fast is around the 24-hour mark, where you're like used to having some food, but you're not getting it, and then you're creating this huge sort of a psychological, response and psychological freak out that you think that something is going to go wrong. But in reality, if you kind of skip that, if you go past it, then everything is going to be fine. But the only problem is that you may get hungry, and that's going to make it difficult for you to fall asleep. Once you fall asleep and you wake up in the next day, then you're going to be in like very deep ketosis and deeper autophagy as well, which will kind of prevent hunger and stop all the cravings as well. The most difficult part is to get to bed and fall asleep. So what I tend to do is having like definitely using some sort of a herbal teas or decaf coffee in the evening, that can be also good to help you to stave off hunger while still being able to fall asleep. And additional things that can also help with hunger is like apple cider vinegar with some hot water. That's going to be good to shut down the hunger signals, and it's not necessarily going to stop the fasted state either, because see, apple cider vinegar can promote ketones as well as like stimulate autophagy a little bit. As if and the amounts of apple cider vinegar you would take is also like 1 to 2 teaspoons, so it's not going to be like significant.
Mm-hmm. And so that
The,
and you
the
find
best the,
sorry.
the best thing everyone can do before starting of any of these longer fasts is to start eating low carb at least a few days before that, because it will help them to become more fat adapted. It will condition the body to use some fatty acids for fuel, and it will also deplete the glycogen faster. So you're going to get into the therapeutic range of ketosis as well as autophagy faster if you are eating like a lower carb keto diet. So before starting a 3-day fast, I would at least eat low carb, 2 days before that, just to deplete the glycogen and become keto adapted more. And during the fast, you simply drink, like some water with added salts, maybe some electrolytes, just to balance your electrolytes and to prevent any fatigue. And other things that you could drink are maybe like coffee and some herbal teas.
Okay, yeah, so that's a great tip there to say if you're going to do a multi-day fast, go low carb so you start getting into that state versus trying to jump in from a high carbohydrate state and go, yeah, it's fine, I'll just jump straight into 3-day fast.
Because like when you are doing these longer fasts, then you have to get into ketosis, or you want to get into ketosis as soon as possible, because if you're fasting and you're not in ketosis, like coming from a high carb diet or after a cheat day even, then in that case you're more predisposed to losing some of your muscle tissue through gluconeogenesis, so to say. And you like gluconeogenesis is driven by demand, and when you're fasting without the presence of ketones, then the demand of glucose is still there, and your body will take that glucose from your protein, from your muscle tissue. Versus if you have ketones present, you've become keto adapted before that, then there's not going to be a demand for gluconeogenesis, because your body can run safely on ketones. So definitely the critical part for preventing any muscle catabolism during a fast is to get into ketosis.
Mm-hmm. So again, great tip. I'm just thinking there, yes. So some people may be following a way of eating where they have cheat days, like carb back night solution or something like that, another way of eating. And so they're like, oh, I've just binged on a whole bunch of food. Maybe I should do a 3-day fast to cleanse now. And it's like, no, that's maybe not the best time to try a fast now.
It's not gonna be, it's not, you could do it and you would probably be fine. But I would say you would be, it would be easier for you to fast if you simply had like a keto diet, or at least a 1 day of keto before that.
Mm-hmm. And then I love that tip where you said, especially that first day, then by the end of the day, and you might be thinking, oh, I've been hungry all day because I haven't had a meal all day. And it's that maybe the first or second night where you think, oh, I'm struggling to sleep because my tummy's rumbling or something. And then you'd have the herbal tea or decaf coffee or apple cider vinegar drink just to settle your stomach to let you sleep that night.
Yeah, it is like the most difficult part is you're going to bed, and you necessarily don't want to you don't want to cash in on all these appetite suppressants either. Like you don't want to become too addicted to coffee and drink like 5 to 10 cups of coffee during the fast, because it's gonna not be worth it because of the overstimulating cortisol and getting too caffeinated. So you want to use them only when you actually get hungry, so to say.
Mm-hmm. And then what are your views on people who work out? Is it okay to work out during that fasting period? Or should you be, I guess it depends on what they're trying to achieve and their metabolic health again. But if you're healthy, would it be okay to work out? I'm thinking if you're unhealthy, then you're going to be using it as a recovery period. So don't stress your body.
Mm. I would say that it is still a good idea to stay active and keep moving your body, whether that be going for like longer walks or doing some yoga or something like that. That's gonna be very good, and it would actually help to keep your mind busy as well as prevent the hunger. So whenever I usually get hungry, maybe I will usually maybe go for a longer walk instead, and that's gonna help to mobilize some of the fat stores and basically keep me satiated for longer. but other types of more resistance training type of workouts, those can also be useful, and that they will probably help with maintaining more muscle mass. Because if you're fasting and you're not doing anything, then you potentially will lose more muscle mass much more faster than if you were to do some sort of light activity. And or it doesn't have to be like a very heavy resistance training or high intensity interval training or something like that. You can simply do like some calisthenics, some push-ups, some squats. You can use like some of the resistance bands, and you can still kind of stimulate the muscles, and that would be useful for sending the body the signal that we still need to have muscle, and we don't necessarily want to lose it.
So not a big heavy workout where you push yourself to fatigue levels.
Yeah.
That's not the time to do that.
It's simply not going to be worth it. So to say, you probably won't have enough energy to hit PRs and personal records. So why bother? So to say, you can simply take it as a time to deload and aim for maybe like sub maximal type of exercise with resistance training with your own body and some resistance bands.
And so with the time length, and you saying that you've experimented with, it sounds like 3 to 5 days. Do you think that just that 3-day is the optimal window that someone could try get to eventually? Because there seems to be a nice balance then for the autophagy, but not creating any negative effects from fasting. Like 3 days is a good number.
Yeah, the longest I've fasted for has to do with like week. I fasted for a week, and usually whenever I'm having these therapeutic fasts, then I would aim for 3 to 5 days at maximum. And I do think that there will be probably a point of diminishing returns after that point. After 3 days is usually the optimal dose, and there's not going to be like a significant reason to go beyond that unless you have like some sort of a real medical conditions. If you have like maybe again like diabetes or cancer or some tumors or something, then you may want to consider going for longer. But like a healthy person who is simply doing like housekeeping, or they want to go into deeper ketosis or lose some fat, then for them it's not necessary to fast any longer than 3 to 5 days, in my opinion.
And then once someone's gone through the fasting period, it's always, how do I break the fast? What's your tips on the best way to break it?
What I like to do is always start whenever I am eating anything, then I would usually start off with some apple cider vinegar and some hot lemon water, and maybe a few slices of some raw ginger in there as well, to promote the digestive enzymes as well as direct more blood flow into the gut, and that's going to be good to stimulate. It's going to be better for like absorbing the foods and preventing any sort of constipation or such. And it's usually that would be something that I would start off from, like any type of fasting window, whether that be like a 16-8 or OMAD or like a 3-day fast. And then moving on from there, I would have to look at how long have I been fasting for. If I come from like a shorter fast that is less than 24 hours, then I would consume maybe something with some probiotics and some digestive enzymes like sauerkraut, fermented foods, or maybe some avocados, or again some raw ginger. Or if I'm consuming carbs or something, then I may take like some bananas or kiwi or some fruit, something like that. If I'm coming from like a longer fast, then I may also want to add in some like broth liquids or soups, something to simply more to stimulate more of the digestive enzymes, as well as again make the gut wake up, so to say, because you don't necessarily want to consuming very hard to digest foods immediately coming off from a longer fast, because your gut isn't probably ready for it, and it would be better to kind of ease into it.
So again, great tip. I love that, all the actionable stuff that you're sharing here. So coming off that fast, something again that people were drinking, like apple cider vinegar drink or a lemon drink or lemon tea, that just helps to stimulate the blood flow to the gut to say, hey, get ready, I'm about to maybe try eat here. So it's not going to be a big shock to your body.
Yeah, and specifically like ginger and lemon water and apple cider vinegar, they also help with the breakdown of proteins, so to say. So you would always want to absorb the proteins that you eat, and just to repair your body as well as recover from the fast better. So that's going to be helping with that.
So I'm interested. So we've sort of given the practical ways of doing this, and so mentally and physically, like what are some of the experiences that you've had during these fasted states?
Funny enough, like when I was doing my anthropological research for my thesis, a few years ago at a meditation retreat. And I was also fasting during that time period, so it was already like a more profound experience where I was meditating a lot and I was fasting at the same time. So I would say that during a fasted state, I tend to, or during these longer fasted states, I tend to experience not only like this heightened mental clarity and focus, but also this sort of a blissful feeling of not being attached to anything, so to say. I don't feel the desire to have food. Even I don't feel the desire to have any kind of material possessions or whatever. I'm simply laying there, or like I'm simply feeling my body in some way and experiencing what goes on. So to say, I can feel maybe like there may be like some sort of increased heart rate or like accelerated blood flow in some regions, and it makes you feel very blissful and relaxed. You don't really care about anything else that goes on. You're simply like experiencing everything that goes on, and it's very. I would describe it as like the sort of a blissful state where you're free from attachments, as well as being very at ease and very present.
Yeah, so it's a way of supercharging mindfulness and making you feel
Yeah.
great.
Yeah, it is. And like you can also experience some aspects of it when you are in like very deep ketosis, and there will be like one point doing a longer fast, maybe around 48-hour mark or something like that. You will experience this sort of a shift where you kind of everything lights up and you are very alert all the time, and that's sort of a part of a blend of this raise in ketones as well as the raise in cortisol and adrenaline and everything that goes on. So it is kind of a funny feeling.
Um, so I think we've explored the 3-day fast and how to get fasted. Just going on to the extreme end of things, what do you think of some fasting techniques like dry fasting? I've had some people comment on some of the interviews I've done saying, hey, I've done dry fasting, or have you ever explored the concept of dry fasting? With you having experienced fasting and researched it so much, do you have a viewpoint on is dry fasting good or bad?
Mm, I would say that it may at first sound even more crazier than like these longer fasts, but it does also make some metabolic sense as well. Because if you're not drinking water, then your body will still produce the water it needs from the process of beta oxidation and the burning of fat. The byproduct of that creates hydrogen, so it's still going to keep your body hydrated, and that's how camels and other animals also survive longer periods of dehydration. They're not carrying around water with them, but they're simply converting their own body fat into water and keeping themselves nourished that way. There isn't like many research done on it, practically no research at all, but there are some anecdotal results from a lot of people, as well as different, let's say, traditional type of homeopathic medicine practitioners from Russia and other places where they do incorporate it into their practice. And specifically, there's this Russian doctor. I don't recall his exact name, but he's Dr. Filonov or someone who has said to be curing a lot of his patients by putting them on these longer dry fasts and curing cancer and other similar diseases. There is still, although there is some truth that dehydration will inhibit mTOR a lot, and it will also stimulate AMPK and autophagy. So you can also make some guesstimates that it will have like a similar benefit as you would get from a longer extended water fast. But the kind of the degree of intensity is much higher than on a water fast, because you're not drinking water. You probably will not be able to be as physically active, and you probably won't be able to fast as long as that. You probably have to cut it off after maybe like 3 days maximum or such, and then follow it up with a proper rehydration period.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I've always wanted to ask someone, just like, this dry fasting sounds fascinating. I need to explore this topic more. Why would
It's
someone want
like
to do that?
you can still do like daily time restricted dry fasting, so to say. Like I've been experimenting that with, and I've seen some good results on it, from like improved digestion, as well as more fat burning during the day, and simply feeling quite mentally clear, because you don't really feel very tired when you are doing dry fasting. You feel, I would say that if you were to be drinking a lot of water, then that will be worse than to dry fast. Because if you're drinking too much water all the time, then you may potentially excrete a lot of the electrolytes and minerals. Versus if you were to dry fast, then you're gonna retain all of those minerals, and that's gonna help you to feel better during the fast. So a shorter 16-hour dry fast is quite easy, and it can be done even more frequently than like a longer 3-day fast.
That's the fascinating concept. So time restricted dry fasting, and just saying, okay, maybe only in 1 or 2 hours in a day I'm going to consume liquids, or that's when I eat my meal too, like OMAD. But all those other times I'm going to try avoid liquids.
You don't have it doesn't have to be like that long. You can again like maybe cut off all liquids after dinner and help you to empty your bladder before going to bed by doing that, and then in the morning maybe wait a few hours, and that's going to create already like at least like a 12-hour to 14-hour dry fasting window, which is going to be pretty good.
Again, Siim, this is why I wanted to get you on. I thought you were going to be fascinating, and you definitely are. So I love all of these concepts. We're coming up for the hour mark here. So this is usually a time when I get to ask, are there any particular social places that you want people to follow you, or if someone wants to contact you? I don't know if I think you've got some books maybe, or some publications around fasting and keto. How would people get hold of that?
Yeah, they can definitely check out my YouTube, which is one of my most active platforms, Siim Land on YouTube. On other platforms, I'm also Siim Land. My podcast is also on YouTube, and it's Body Mind Empowerment on iTunes. But for my books, I do have some books about keto, like keto fasting and keto bodybuilding. But I also am publishing my upcoming book called Metabolic Autophagy, which will go into more detail about how do you stimulate autophagy with fasting, and how do you balance it out appropriately with the other aspects of doing properly refeeds and doing resistance training and exercise, and how do you promote your longevity with that.
Fantastic. And I'll link to all of these in the show notes for listeners. But I just want to say thank you again for your time and your in-depth actionable tips there. I really did enjoy that today.
All right. Thanks for having me. And it was fun talking with you.